If I said to you, the Doug Anthony AllStars, Don't Forget Your Toothbrush, and Cheeky Monkey, what would you say is the common thread?
You're
The
out of your
answer,
mind.
the answer in just a moment. Performer, writer, producer, and lots of other things, Tim Ferguson. Welcome and thank you.
Oh, yeah, sorry for interrupting you twice. The listener will probably already be irritated, so let me interrupt myself. Shut up, I interrupted myself. But hi, John. Oh, we've worked together, and now here we are working together.
Here we are, and thank you for interrupting, because honestly, it's not about me, it's about you, and there is so much to talk about.
It is, it's a good time to be talking because, you know, the world is going crazy. People are getting worried about America. I mean, they don't have to worry about America. It's like, oh, yeah, gee, America doesn't change its mind every 5 seconds. Whatever's going wrong today, tomorrow will be fixed because it will be replaced by something worse.
So let's do that wavy picture sort of thing. You grew up in Singapore. How was that, and when did you come to Australia?
Well, John, my father was a war correspondent in the Vietnam War for the ABC, and I think for the Telegraph. The idea was, as a few of the other journalists did, was to park families, wives and children, and there were only wives and children. There were no women in the 70s, but to park those people in Singapore in not so much a compound, but just sort of close-knit community to each other. So it was a great place to spend the first few years of my life, mainly because we spent most of the time in the pool.
Right. And when did you come to Australia?
When I was, I think, 7. So I'd spent 7 years there. And the only hangover I have from Singapore is this sort of semi-fancy accent. And people would always say, "Are you English?" No. Were you educated at university? No, of course not. Why would I waste my time? And then I saw Li Lin Ching at the airport one day, and we had a chat, and she was, of course, that very well-spoken but slightly stroppy SBS newsreader. You always felt you were in trouble that Netanyahu had done something. And I noticed the accent and said, "Why do you sound so classy?" She said, "It's the Singapore accent." And then it went, ding. That's why I sound like I went to university without having to go to university and waste 3 to 7 years of my life, I don't know, sitting around hoping I get a future. Better go and get one.
So instead of advertising university courses, they should just advertise be born and grow up in Singapore.
Yeah. I mean, if you sound classy, what's the difference? Sure enough, if you want a brain surgeon, then I would insist upon a university education. But I don't know of any instance where someone has said, "My God, if only someone had done an arts degree." If you want to waste time, that's the way to do it. Now, people who have arts degrees say, "Yes, but it taught me how to think." Yeah, you've got a human brain, so you're probably okay. "Yes, but it showed me what I should read." Yeah, have you heard of libraries? So I read everything that my friends were doing at ANU.
Yes.
And when they were doing arts and a couple of other silly courses, forestry was one of them. But I read everything, read all the nature and also the Kafka and bit of film studies books. And once you've read them, all you have to do at university is write down what you think of them, and someone tells you whether you're right or not. And I read the books and I had opinions. I think Kafka's Trial is a great way to run the legal system. But once again, I'm the only voice calling for that. So yeah, you don't have to do arts. You just have to go to art and look at it and read about it, you lazy, directionless dicks.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you say that. I'm not going to say that.
I said that.
alienate the one person that watches and listens to this.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
So your father, as you said, was a Vietnam War correspondent. He later became an executive at the ABC.
Yeah, yeah. In between that, in fact, he became executive producer of Four Corners
Right.
and also the 7:30 report equivalent, which was called This Day Tonight, who were there at the changeover of black and white to colour. So he was very, very newsy. But then the ABC sacked him because he insisted on putting stories to air that hadn't been cleared by management. I mean, if you've met ABC management, you'll know that that's almost compulsory that you have to do that. You've never met more frightened individuals in your life, unless you're talking to people who run Radio National. So I think it's, so he got fired. We went to the bush. Then he started working with the Hawke government as the head of their press corps. And then he and David Hill came to Sydney and, took over the ABC. And they're the ones who built the ABC buildings and built Australia broadcasts all around Asia. Dad started shows like Media Watch, which are still going. They were very influential. And, if you look at Media Watch, it's a TV show designed by people who want to cause trouble. People who are perfectly happy to upset ABC management, which is barely management. I didn't beef with ABC management. They've always been very nice to me, but it's good to give them a bit of a poke. I do like what Kim Williams, the new chair, is doing at the ABC, if only because he's complaining about the ABC, whether they never really used to.
It's a perfect segue into Doug Anthony AllStars. How did that come about?
That came about, John, through, I was busking with Richard Feidler is where it started, and we had a third member who then went to mime school in Paris, which we thought was cool, but it turned out okay. He ended up working as Bill Clinton's liaison at the UN.
Not silent, though.
No, he's still out there. He spent a lot of time in Nepal, and, he's the kind of person that ended up building wells and all that stuff. So the Doug Anthony AllStars comically are, doing pretty well without much effort from the rest of us. But yeah, Robert Piper's an extraordinary human being, and I do love that man very much. He's very smart, and he can say things like, yes, so I was saying to Al Gore, you're wrong, and that he wasn't joking. He was talking to Al Gore and telling him he's wrong.
And then the incarnation with Paul McDermott.
Yeah. Then we met Paul, and lo and behold, he was doing funny sketches for me as I was producing a monthly cabaret comedy show, and he worked with a group called Gigantic Fly, which I thought was funny, and they did very funny stuff. And when Robert decided, I'm going to Paris to learn how to be quietly, building walls, we asked Paul, and he said, I don't know. We said, can you sing? He said, I don't know. And then he sang, and that was it, because he's got a wonderful voice. And it went from there. But we had a couple of years practice busking before we really did anything, because we were in Canberra.
Right.
Canberra is usually the place you go when you want to die. But for us, there we were waiting to be born. But after a couple of years, we'd had a lot of practice. So when we turned up at the Edinburgh Festival on spec with no real organisation and no venue for the first 3 weeks of the festival, we quietly set about taking over the festival by increasingly incendiary performances, a couple of that caused genuine riots, like a riot in the venue. And all we did was set out to upset the Scots.
So it stands to reason. And those appearances, did they lead to the big gig and Das Kapital?
Yeah. Before that, we got thrown onto British television, a show called Friday Night Live, which had big inflatable props in the room, not unlike the big gig. So that was very exciting. We were instantly, if not famous, known. We could walk down the street and young people would come up and go, "Oh my God, is that you?" I was just saying to my girlfriend, "That's those Australians." And from that, Ted Robinson, who was making a new show, The Big Gig, a live comedy show. Imagine pitching that today, anywhere on earth, to free-to-air television. Yeah, so it's going to be live. We don't exactly know what the comedians are going to do, but
and that's
every
comedy
week,
and it's variety. Yeah, you'll do that.
That's right. Yeah, comedy, variety. And what will the Doug Anthony AllStars do this week? Well, we don't really have that much of an idea. They've given us a script written up on a napkin, and they've asked for, what is it? Oh, some dynamite to be placed under audience members. Apart from that, away we go. We'd have one rehearsal, and 2 hours later, we're on national television live. So the entire ABC, which had no rivals in terms of the internet, we had Australia in our grasp. And boy, we were very graspy.
You were indeed, and so much so that Das Kapital happened.
Yeah, Das Kapital. If you're someone who hasn't seen Das Kapital, dear viewer, don't watch it. It's still ahead of its time. Like, it's very good. It's very good. And it's very funny. And it's very imaginative and very different. But you're not ready for it yet. You're not emotionally or intellectually empowered enough to cope with it. Partly because you're in Australia, and also because you're in Australia. It's a show that includes some great performances from Paul Livingston. His character Flacco was in every week. Michael Petroni, who performed as a character called Bob, who was somehow in my subconscious, but it was never really mentioned. Basically, as soon as I was sitting by myself every episode, Bob would walk in and usually blow himself up or set fire to himself or whatever, with just the simple promise that he'd be back next week. It was a highly chaotic period. We had animation, we had puppetry, we had stop frame animation, there was music, there was a live studio audience. Anybody putting on a sitcom today is a wimp. Yeah, so I thought what we do is we just keep single camera on location, no laugh track, no audience response, because what if it doesn't work? And like, we say stuff, but the audience has to be smart to work out why it's funny. The only trouble is everybody's doing it, and in everybody's doing it, is it really original?
It's not unique.
That thought with you. No, you want to get back in front of a crowd and make them scream.
I was told a story of a show at National Theatre in St Kilda where you were getting reactions from the audience with a microphone, but what you didn't tell them was you'd also fastened a lipstick camera to the microphone and were recording distorted vision of them.
Yeah. You've got to throw television around. I mean, we live in a time when you can do anything and you can put it on the broadcasting network worldwide, thanks to YouTube, just to get started. And people are still doing straight to camera, no studio audience, why take the risk? Or doing just solo stand-up. Here I am doing my 5 minutes in front of a studio audience. Like, wake up. You can grab a camera and stick it up your nose just for fun and do a montage saying this camera is going to go up 5 people's noses just to see what's going on or something. You can turn the way people are watching on its head. Sure, you can parody news and you can parody drama and, that sort of stuff. But why not grab a camera and see what it can do and think, what has no one ever done on live national television with a camera?
And what is that?
Well, we don't know yet. I'm waiting for a younger person, a brave individual to say, wait a second, we could put a camera here, we could turn it around there, we could attach it to a cat, and, I don't know. It doesn't matter. That's for someone else to think of. As far as we went, we had lipstick cameras, as you say, all over the place. We would put them everywhere, down toilets, in here, in there, just for a gag, just to see what would happen. It's very strange, John. I'm 61 now, born in 63, and I remember when we were younger being told, stop that, calm down, that's enough. Hey, you young people. If you want to be entertaining, then be entertaining, but you don't have to do it with all this shouting and all this carry on with, excitement and harsh language, all those, risque topics, like reading live on TV from Salman Rushdie's book. The week after the fatwa had landed upon him. The week after. But instead, I find myself, now that I'm one of the older ones, saying to young people, for Christ's sake, lighten it up. Like, you put some speed in its veins. You're making your own television and you're standing around talking about dating apps? Stand up about, dating apps, swipe left, swipe right. Who gives a toss about that? Because everybody's talking about it, and that's risque. It's about grabbing the form of stand-up, if that's the form you're working in, and taking it for a run, taking it for a spin, and just have a rule, the rule being you want to do what nobody else is doing. You've got to reinvent the form. That's when you become a legend. And I'm a legend now, mainly because I've been doing it for a long time. You start as a possible legend, move to the myth stage, but if you're still doing it by 61, then you are classified as a legend.
A dead set legend.
I find myself doing the opposite to what it was like, 30 years ago, where older people were saying, calm down. And here I am, the older guy, saying, go wild, go mad, smash the system. There are no rules. There are no fucking rules. Stop acting like there are rules. Stop standing in a queue outside a comedy venue saying, oh, I hope they draw my name out of the bucket, which is what they do. Everybody gets 5 minutes, but we can't have everybody on, so we draw their names out of a bucket. How can you possibly do that to comedians if you're a venue? And how can you possibly accept that if you're someone who thinks you're going to have a career? You've got to get in the driver's seat of your comedy. Otherwise,
so for an example, what would the 30-year-old Tim have done in that situation?
Oh, in that situation, just go outside and busk to the people queuing up outside.
Right.
That's just without even having to think, that would be a first step. Or walk on stage uninvited to say, my name wasn't pulled out of the bucket. Would you like to see me? That's why quite often I will, if I have to teach stand-up, my first thing is go busking. When they go, yeah, but I only talk, I say, yeah, well, gee, I didn't even have to put a blockage up. I didn't even have to give you a reason why you shouldn't do it. You made it up yourself. So you are creative. Just go out and do it. The audience is walking up and down Pitt Street in Sydney or Hay Street or, whatever those other malls are, unbothered, why not put your face in front of them and say, hey, I tell you what, for $2, I'll give you 2 minutes of my new comedy. You can have one of 3 topics, my mother, penguins, Batman, whatever it might be. And everybody who's got half a brain will say, 2 minutes, $2, sure, hit me. If you're young and you're new, you will just get better, and that is your stage time. And just so nobody thinks they're going to be mugged, have someone who's dressed respectfully with you, who's holding on to the beeper that will take their money, or a hat that will take their cash. There's a guy who does this on Chapel Street in Melbourne, and very soon he will have his own radio show. And why? Because he bumped into the right idiot like me.
I'll change tack a little bit. You did a show with Working Dog called Funky Squad, set in the 70s, parody. Yeah. It was like What Squad and Starsky and Hutch. Was that fun?
Funky Squad, John, was so much fun. I mean, you get to dress up in pure polyester and run around pretending to be cops. And the dialogue was always pretty closely modelled on like the Mod Squad. So you'd be saying cop stuff, we're going to arrest them, but you'd have to do it in a cool way. The scripts were largely written, I think, by Tom Gleisner, and, of course, the other 3, the Rob Sitch, Jane Kennedy, Santo Chalaro. They were just, fun. It was just fun. You get to drive around. One time, John, we were at, I think, Monash University, and I was dressed in my blonde wig, dressed in this canary yellow, flary 70s outfit, and had these big fake sideburns and these really cool aviators on. Like I looked like some sort of freakish, not cool, but cool guy who was 20 years out of his depth. And I had to go to the cafe to get a coffee. And I just walked up to the lady in character and said, yeah, could I have a coffee? Thanks. And when she brought it to me, I said, have you seen any suspicious characters around here? And she was quite spooked. No, I haven't. You sure? No. Keep your eyes open, I said. They're 4 of Australia's top geniuses. How they still put up with each other, you would think is a miracle, but they're all adorable. And they have a rule which I had to ask them about. I asked Santo, I said, how come you're all so nice to each other? Because I'd been in the Doug Anthony AllStars for a decade. And he said, we put courtesy before comedy. And I was just, wow, fascinating. But that's what they do. And that's why they're still together making great shows like Utopia. They're putting another movie together, more books.
Gypsies, have you been paying attention? The list goes on.
Of course, yeah. Have you been paying attention? They're just a machine in Melbourne, and they employ a lot of people, and they're always employing new people, young people. They've got great standard, people running departments, but they're always really open to helping new people in the industry, which is something that all companies should be interested in.
And it's so sadly lacking.
Yeah. Sadly, the bigger companies get, the less interested they are in taking the risk on, I don't know, some young woman went to TAFE and she thinks she can operate a camera. They go, oh, why don't we just use John? He might be 78. That's John with an H, not John without an H.
Okay, thank you.
Why don't we use 78? He's 78, but oh boy, he's got a great eye. It's time. It's always time.
Well, do you think that experience is valued in this modern world?
More than you would think. Not so much generally. I'm sure that there are other companies, particularly marketing, they're usually after younger people because they're desperate. to try and attract younger people, and working with younger people seems to be one way to do it. But certainly when it comes to the technical end, when you go on a TV set, you usually see people who are at least over 40 or over 50. And I think that's got to change. We've got to get people in younger and put them in the harness so that we set them up for autonomy as soon as they've got their skills to say, right, I'm out. I've got my own business.
That's right. But where are the avenues, apart from the likes of Working Dog, for young people to learn from experience, 61-year-olds?
Yeah, it's difficult now. One thing that has developed, which I'm part of now, is the TAFE now has a largely open door system for people who want to learn about media and screen writing, filming, sounding, whatever the verb is. Is that professional listening? Whereas that avenue wasn't available before, but maybe a good one, if only because, as I tell the students I have at Randwick TAFE, you want to meet people in the industry, well, they're sitting right next to you. The industry moves pretty fast. Every 5 years, a whole bunch of people have retired, gotten too rich, died, and they're going to need new people, and you're sitting next to them. It's a new starting place for people who want those skills. But the other way in is to do it by yourselves. One of my students has gone and spent a ludicrous amount of money on a good camera.
Right.
And all of a sudden, she has found herself the most popular person in Sydney's short film industry. Because who's not making a short film? I'm sure they're going to make a short film of what we're doing now.
Well, I'm making it.
Right, you're making one right now. And so by investing in herself a little, taking the risk, she's suddenly very busy, and all her other colleagues are saying, how much does a boom microphone cost? We could do this ourselves. Then every time they do it, they end up with something else on their CV. And TAFE is just a good place to meet other people who want to do the same.
You teach screenwriting in particular at a number of institutions and are a sessional lecturer in screenwriting and writing TV comedy for the AFTRS. You also teach TAFE, which you spoke about. So let's talk about Cheeky Monkey.
Ah, yeah, the Cheeky Monkey. The Cheeky Monkey was my comedy writing manual, John. And the reason why I thought, my God, I've got to write something, was because I went to an Australian Writers Guild weekend in Daylesford in Victoria, which is just very cold, really. But there were 250 plus Australian screenwriters of TV and film, and it was wonderful to meet them. Really just highly imaginative, driven people living in perpetual risk as they pour time in as the cash they put in to the machine to develop a script with the hope that they'll be able to sell it. And I thought, these are gutsy people. But one thing I noticed was nobody was writing anything remotely comic.
Mm-hmm.
There were only 2 people I spoke to who said, gosh, comedy would be good. The other people I met were writing desperately serious Australian drama.
I was just going to say, you sent me an email which said, tragic dramas don't sell. I devoted my teaching to encouraging young people, new people to embrace genre, comedy, anything entertaining. In a way, I'm cheating by creating large groups of Australian screenwriters who see family drama twaddle as the unwatchable bilge it is.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you write deep and dark family dramas of families just being horrible to each other, usually with a middle-aged man who drinks too much, who is committing whatever the crime is, who needs to be punished. Yeah, sure. All I say to my students is, when was the last time you bought a ticket to see a film about this. Bueller, like they don't. I say, so you see the problem. When was the last time you went to see a horror film with your friends? Hands go up. When was the last time you went to see a romantic comedy? And kind of embarrassed hands go up, but they all go up. So my thing is, why would you go and make something which is really just a rant at society or rant at your parents, when you can write something that's, what's the word for entertaining? Oh yeah, entertaining. Because that's what people will pay for. When you think of your favorite TV shows over the last decade, Breaking Bad was really just about crime. A man turns to crime. Anything else? No, not really.
Well, it had the most superb character arc you've probably ever seen.
Oh, yeah, magnificent. And Walter White is one of the great characters. Very simply built. What was he? He was a very decent man, faced with a terrible problem, who comes up with a novel solution, which happens to be distributing and creating methamphetamine. But very simple, but it's what everybody was talking about. They weren't saying, my God, have you seen that thing about that caravan in Gosford family? Oh my God. Really? I mean, I thought I'd seen everything, but at the end of the day, there's no audience. So the person writing it will not end up with a beach house.
Oh, is that the final goal?
You buy a beach house because you got enough money to buy a beach house that you go to every once in a while. You know, then you've got too much money.
Coming up in part 2 with Tim Ferguson.
The symbol of drama has two masks. One of them's crying, I'm living in a caravan in Gosford. The other one is laughing. And the two of them together make drama. If you've never seen Don't Forget Your Toothbrush, the entire audience was there to win a trip. It was all highly frivolous. Yeah, it was great fun. And all the games were deliberately outlandish. They had to sit on a toilet, and the one who held everything in the longest was going to be the winner.
You announced it in 2010 on Good News Week, but you experienced symptoms for quite some time prior. Why was that?
I don't take things personally when I know, oh, you don't like wheelchairs or walkers. Okay. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. And there you are, you're cooked.
If you're enjoying these, please subscribe, please like, please comment. It all helps me make more of these, and there are plenty of favorites to get through. Bye.